All right, everyone, welcome. I love my gavel. I wield the power. Welcome everyone to our final pre-conference education session. The original plan was to have our speaker tonight open our pre-conference education sessions. And in a weird twist of fate, she is now closing us out for the sessions. I hope everyone gives our speaker tonight lots of attention. I will be putting an evaluation form into the chat box later on in the session. We have a total of an hour for our session, so Valda can play with it for Q&A, however she wants to incorporate it with her presentation. And let me introduce you. If you want to live better and play an integral part in improving your health, Valda Ford can help with that. I hope you are ready to take notes and ask questions as she shares with us tonight the keys to being a healthy Toastmaster. Please join me in welcoming to our virtual stage distinguished Toastmaster and accredited speaker, Valda Boyd Ford, and the keys to being a healthy Toastmaster.
There are so many times when, as a registered nurse, I see people who worry about their health or don't worry at all. The thing that I see the most that worries me the most is people who feel like they have plenty of time to live the life that they want to live after they have worked for 40 or 50 years, after they have raised all of their children, after they have paid off all of their bills. And then what happens? Their body is like, what's going on? I don't understand. Why am I being still? Why am I not running like crazy? And it seems very frequently to go into shock. I've seen so many people when they should be at that point of enjoying deciding which vacation spot to go to. Instead, they are dealing with health issues. I got to thinking, what can we start to do now to make sure that we have the keys to healthy living so that we can have the key to enjoyment later in life? This session will be extremely interactive. Anything that you want to know at any point, feel free to stop and ask. I know some things I believe that you will enjoy hearing, but if you have something you want to know, this is your chance. I have been a registered nurse for a really long time, and I had the opportunity to work in over 60 countries around the world, trying to improve health. Sometimes it's worked out very well in countries other than the North American countries. So let's see if we can do better for ourselves today. The first thing I think that you need to do is know your numbers. How many of you know which numbers about your health status are the most important to know? Yes, Susan.
I would take a guess, not your voice, but it would be your blood pressure and possibly your heart rate, your respirations, your weight, BMI.
Yes, those are very important. Now, the interesting thing about BMI is it can be a little flexible depending on a number of things, but we definitely need to know that number and understand it. So you talked about blood pressure, you talked about heart rate, you talked about weight, and what was the other one?
Respirations, how many breaths you take per minute.
All right. We take 23,040 breaths a day in general. If we are basically having 16 respirations per hour, the average is between 12 and 20. So if you're breathing faster than that, there is probably some stress going on. If you're breathing slower than that, it may be because you have such good lung capacity that you're able to exchange oxygen and CO2 better. Same thing for your heart rate. What do you think is the normal heart rate? I see, is that Kelly? Oh, Kathy.
I was guessing 76.
That's kind of in the middle. The average heart rate should be between 60 and 99. If you're an athlete, it may be lower in the 50s. A friend of mine just told me yesterday that her normal heart rate is 45. But I can tell you that most of us here, if we suddenly have a 45, they better get a little device called a pacemaker nearby to help us, because just like with your respirations, if your heart rate is that low, it means that the compensatory side is that there's more volume coming with each beat so that enough oxygen is carried around the body. For most of us, we're beating at about 70 to 75, and some people are closer to 60. But the most important thing about all of these numbers is to know what's normal for you. What is a normal blood pressure? And if I don't see your hand, just speak out. Yes, Chris.
128/80. And that's what mine was this week, when I went in.
Well, that's a good blood pressure, but what is considered to be normal these days? The numbers have changed.
They're probably higher after COVID because of stress.
Well, we're definitely stressed after COVID. And I don't know how long it's going to take to get there. A friend of mine who's a psychiatrist has said we're living in quiet hysteria. That is, we've become so accustomed to being crushed that we don't even know that we're feeling all of this anxiety, stress, sometimes depression. But the American Heart Association has determined that a good blood pressure and what we want to shoot for is below 120/80. So Chris, you're in good shape. I don't tell anyone to worry about it if they're at 128. I mean, most people would love to have 128. But they're saying that now we know that smaller increments of change make a difference more than we used to know. When I started in nursing, it was thought that a blood pressure of 140/90 was the beginning of hypertension. Now we're calling it a lower number, because if we become accustomed to 140/90 being the place that we have to worry about being hypertensive or having high blood pressure, then we might not do anything to stop getting to 140/90. So the goal is to keep from getting to that cutoff place that says, maybe I'm in trouble, maybe I need to be medicated. Because high blood pressure means that the numbers, the top number and the low number, means when your heart is working, that's the high number. When your heart is at rest, that's the low number. And so if it's really high, it means that your heart is working really hard to push the blood around. Think about your blood vessels like a garden hose. And when it's really good and the way it should be, the water just flows through it beautifully. But if it gets a kink, depending on how much of a kink it is, there can be back pressure to get that water through. Sometimes we want to do that, right? When we kink it off to get a little bit more pressure when we're washing the soap off our cars, if we don't have that little nozzle to do that. But we don't want that going on inside our bodies. That happens, it means that there's extra stress on the heart. And when the heart is overstressed, then the heart muscles can overgrow. They can hypertrophy. So just like if you want to have a muscle in your arm and you want it to be a normal muscle, but then it becomes like this, that's usually a hypertrophy, and maybe it's too big and it gets in your way. You've seen some bodybuilders, right? Like they can't really put their arms down on the side, is because they have gone past what normal is, or what normal would be for most of us who are just in good health. Overall, in order to be healthy, the keys to a healthy life are to have a knowledge of what your numbers are, a knowledge of what's going on with your health and what things affect it. So let's say that your blood pressure is 118/78, your heart rate is 75, your respirations are 14. Let's say that your BMI is between 25 and 29, which is overweight, but for the USA, it isn't really, it's more normal. But basically under 25 is normal. Then, so 25 to 29 is overweight, 30 to 34 is obese, 35 plus is morbidly obese, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, in the USA, those numbers almost don't work for us, but they're things that we can shoot for. I have had many health conditions in my life, and I've been told many times what I have to do in order to get better. Many times, all that comes with that is a prescription for a new medication. Let me tell you, another key to being healthy is to be an advocate for yourself. If you have a healthcare provider automatically say, if there's a health condition that you need another drug or the first drug, then maybe you'll ask, are there any alternatives? For instance, how many of you know what your cholesterol should be? Yes, that is Susan.
I believe the normal, or what mine should be, would be around 100. But that also takes in consideration your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol and how that evens out in your triglycerides.
Right.
So even though my number's high, my good cholesterol is really high, above the average. I think it's like 85.
Oh, yes, because you just wanted to be at 50 or above. So that's extraordinarily good. Now, the usual number for total cholesterol is under 200 is considered normal. So 100 might be your LDL, your low density lipoprotein. That's more like that number and where it would be. But the total is usually, as long as it's under 200, and most people are shooting for 150 or so, even know if there's a problem with it being 100, but check back on those numbers to be sure, because there's so many, as you know, the triglycerides, the low density, the high density, and it makes a difference. The high density lipoproteins, the HDL, are the protective parts of the cholesterol. And women usually have pretty good cholesterol as compared to men, but that can change. Any of the heart factors can change after menopause because we lose that protection. I suppose that we need to be super healthy so we can have that next generation of Toastmasters. But, so, and then when menopause goes away, they say, well, we're useless. There's no point in us being healthy anymore. And then our numbers can really catch up with men's as far as negative on the heart side. So I have been told that my cholesterol is high, over 200. The initial thought is to put me on a statin drug, one that reduces my cholesterol. Why would we want my cholesterol to be lower? What does excess cholesterol do in the body?
The excess, I'm just jumping in, it starts to clog where the blood goes through, so it has a smaller vessel to carry it through, and it blocks it. So then you're not getting the blood through the rest of your body. I'm trying to find my test results to see what my numbers are.
It absolutely is possible that the extra cholesterol starts to become plaque. And then when there's plaque, then you have hardening or you have scarring inside the vessels. And once you get a scar, then it makes more scars. But cholesterol can become plaque, which becomes hard. So blood vessels, again, For the blood to flow through it, it needs to be pliable just a little bit. So it can go through and it's not feeling like this, as you were talking about, Chris, that compression, where then your blood pressure gets higher. When your blood pressure is higher, it injures your heart, it can injure your kidneys, and it can cause a stroke. So we don't want any of that. Cholesterol, though, is something that healthcare providers should want to do more tests before they put you on a statin drug, because some people can handle a higher cholesterol and not have the negative effects. I am one of those people. My cholesterol was high when I was young and running and playing racquetball and swimming every day and running after little kids. And they were like, oh, we need to put you on some meds. I was like, oh, luckily I knew, why don't we test to see if my heart is showing any effects of it? And it wasn't. And even now, 30 years later, I just had a scan. I have no problems with my heart. Okay, God, you hear me? They said it. I'm not just the one predicting it. Please let a sister stay here. But I have no negative effects of my cholesterol being high. But that is a genetic thing in my family. We carry high blood pressure. No one has had a heart attack or a stroke. But don't try this at home, folks. Let's talk to your people, because there are some easy scans that can be done and some easy tests to find out what is going on with your cardiac status. My challenge these days is that I'm finding healthcare providers, and I'm one of them, to be less and less curious. If you ask a question, they don't know the answer. They just say, we don't find this. And I will use myself as an example again. In 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, my son had a really devastating injury where we didn't know if he would ever walk again. He had to have 16 months of rehabilitation. I was his full-time care provider, trying to take care of him, get him to rehab, and not let him get COVID. I started to have significant pain, just like, oh, terrible. I couldn't even open any kind of jar. Those push down things, like if you have cough syrup or something, I couldn't get them open. But I hurt in my shoulders, and they assumed I had a rotator cuff problem. Went to the physical therapist. Of course, I'm really worried now as a parent. And they said, you were probably overstressed, and this is just your reaction to stress. Take some muscle relaxers, take some sleeping pills, get some sleep, try to get your stress off. We worked at that for 4 months, and it got worse and worse and worse. And so finally, as a registered nurse, I said, I don't think I should be hurting this much for 4 months in a row, feeling worse in the morning than I do when I go to bed at night. And yes, I am a full-time caregiver in a pandemic where I have to do it by myself. Let's do some more tests. And when we did, we found out that what I had was rheumatoid arthritis. Now, because I wasn't having what they were expecting to see, where my hands had not become deformed and I did not have any joint deformities, swelling, or pain, they didn't look for that. And only when I said, can we do some more tests? Can we look at my C-reactive protein, which is a really good test for letting you know there's way too much inflammation in your body. And if it's super high, then that means you can be setting yourself up for a stroke. You can have an autoimmune disease or all sorts of things. So they checked it, and it was going like, "Ooh, danger, Will Robinson." It was horrible. Plus some other things, rheumatoid factor. So once we found out what it was, we could do what we needed to do. And by that time, my hands had started to kind of get like this. But that was 4 to 6 months later. And then it took me another 4 months to see a doctor. Now, I say all of this because the key to my health at that point was to discover what was the problem. There were those who were telling me it was psychological because I was stressed out about my son. I was a nurse and a public health expert in the middle of the pandemic, being really overwhelmed with questions. And of course, not having the ability to work because I was taking care of my son. So they assumed and not necessarily incorrectly that it could be psychological, but it was truly physical, maybe with some psychological making it happen. But once I got that under control, everything was fine. Now I am pain-free. I can walk 5 miles a day. I have a very big dog that weighs 130 pounds that walks me, but I am strong enough to handle her. What is the key here? Self-advocacy. Get to know your body. The reason I tell you about these numbers is that when you know your numbers, especially if you change doctors, nurse practitioners, or PAs, when you change practitioners, they will go back to that bell curve set of what's normal, right? But mainly just this part in the middle, not these outliers here. If your normal blood pressure is 100/60, but they're wanting it to be 120/80, when you get to 120/80, that may mean you're stressed and your heart is stressed, right? If your normal heart rate is 50 because you've been a runner all your life, and now your normal is 90, that may be more dangerous than the person who's normally 75 and it just hit 100. The fact that you know your own body and are willing to say, yes, I understand what you're saying. After a moment or two, after you've tried a few things, be comfortable with asking, is there any other tests we can do? Is there anything else we can try? Because I love the healthcare profession, and the people who are in it and generally are very dedicated and trying their best to be detectives for you. However, with the pandemic, 20% of healthcare providers quit. 20%. We have been short forever in most specialties. 20% quit. And a study that I just saw yesterday shows that 1/3 of all nurses would quit right now if they could afford to. They're overtired, overstressed. When everyone else could hide out, wear their masks, stay in the house, spray Lysol all the time, they were right there on the front lines working with people. They were considered to be heroes for a moment, and then they were considered to be commodities. But they're tired, they're worn out, and they are less likely to go deeper to find it, not because they've lost their desire, but they have lost their energy. So this is where you come in to say, I understand there's a lot going on, but do you mind if we? And typically, if you say it once or twice, they're quite willing to go to the next level. I could have been in pain still for the last 2 years had I not pushed forward. I saw something in the chat, and sometimes it's hard for me to see the chat. But let's see. Okay. I have a high enough RA factor, but no rheumatologist within 40 miles in network, and it would be 8 to 9 months for a new patient evaluation. Well, you know what? When I found out about mine, they told me in April, remember I was diagnosed in January, they told me, not diagnosed, I started having pain in January. I asked for extra tests in April. They told me it would be October or November before I would see someone. I then started calling myself the rheumatologist. And I said, please put me on the no-show list. I know that there's all the stuff about, you need this many minutes for a new consultation, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes you'll hit that right person at the desk and they'll say, okay, so I got in very shortly thereafter. And I know the words to say. So if you're ever wondering, what can you say to kind of push people over? Just call me up and I will give you the dialogue. I'll give you the script to say what you need to say in order for them to take you more seriously. Sometimes you can go back to those very insurance carriers who are too much gatekeepers, they have way too much power to say, this is what's going on. Because what's going on now in insurance, they finally figured out is that if they can keep you healthier, that healthcare is less expensive than sickness care. And that is the US model. It is to take care of you when you get sick as compared to necessarily trying to keep you from getting sick, because people make money on sickness. So call your insurance company and ask them if there is a nurse practitioner or a wellness program, because I've had people during the pandemic talk to me online, do a wellness visit, and sometimes they can get you in faster. And sometimes they will waive that out of area charge, because if you have, say, rheumatoid arthritis, and you're getting to the point that you have less and less mobility, then that means you're more and more likely to have a fall, more likely to have less cardiovascular health, more likely to get higher blood pressure because you're stressed all the time. The long-term problem is you're going to be sicker than you would have been if they treat you right now. They are trying to get that. Not everybody's getting it at the same time. But when you act on your own behalf to call to say, I talked to this nurse named Valda, and this is what she said. I tell people to use my name all the time. You can use my name in vain all you like, because I know the words to say. And I do this with people all the time. When you have a healthcare problem, and I may not be 100% successful, but many people have said, those were the words that took me to the next level. For instance, we may have pain. And when they ask you on the scale of 1 to 10 where your pain is, if you're not really accustomed to what a pain scale is, you might be saying, oh, it's a 4. Or you might be saying it's a 10 where they won't even pay attention to you, because a 10 really means like somebody took an axe and cut your foot off while you were watching. That's a 10, okay? So don't go into the hospital or anywhere saying your pain is a 10, unless you have a kidney stone or there's a baby trying to get out and not having much success, okay? Think about it. Usually when your pain level is a 4 or 5 or more, they'll take you seriously. They will look to see what they can do. Of course, they're stymied these days with that whole thing, the oxycodone nightmare, and they try not to give you pain medicine, even if you need it. But there are ways to get what you need, or ways to find out how to treat yourself without those narcotics in mind. But many, many medical people have gotten into the mindset that everybody is drug seeking, and they will try to avoid giving you something even if you need it. And that was what happened with me with my rheumatoid arthritis. Oh, I'm trying to put this plug in because I got the low battery sign. Okay, I don't want to go disappear. So what are the keys to being healthy? The keys are knowing who you are, knowing how your body normally feels, and being willing to advocate for yourself. Do you have questions that you want to ask specifically that I can tell you what I want you to know? Have health insurance friend that tells me what to say? Absolutely. There you go. Yes, and that is Liz.
Okay, I have a couple questions. So I lost my thyroid, and there were issues with my dad, like with dementia and stuff. And I'm just wondering, you were caregiving for your son and then you got rheumatoid. Do you think there's a correlation between autoimmune conditions and incredible stress? Because do you
Yes.
have anybody else in your family that had rheumatoid, or like you the only one that got it?
Yes, me.
Yeah, so you think that could have triggered it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, I knew about rheumatoid, but my understanding of rheumatoid was definitely not my experience with rheumatoid. I understood that it could be disfiguring and crippling, but I did not know it would take all my energy, that it almost took my sight. I was losing my sight. I have lost half of my hearing. I was losing my hair and my teeth. I was like, just taking everything from the neck up.
Except your mind, right?
Well, I was about to lose my mind because I was thinking, what is going on with this? Why is all this happening? So my story was, we had a cousin we were taking care of who had dementia. He had a lot of things going on before and would have been institutionalized in another point in time, but he had been fine. He had a head injury. He went this deep dive in dementia. Of course, just as COVID started, we couldn't get him into care, and he would just scream and do stuff like that all day. And then the powers that be said we could only have help respite for 4 hours a day. So for
That's
20
not
hours,
enough. Yeah, yeah.
fighting, tearing up things. The most gentle person in the world became this person who became like a sexual predator, who was very aggressive, who was screaming and just destructive. Dealt with that for about 6 months in a row, ended up with another health problem, then got shingles for 4 months. And they would not give me pain medicine for it because I got in the middle of this oxycodone thing. So I had about 18 to 24 months of constant stress.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that my inability to get rid of that stress or to even recognize how much I had contributed to it. That's I believe it. I've seen so many times people who are way under stress, who have autoimmune disease, who have a lot of problems, when they can do a big change to their lifestyle and to their lives, as in what they're putting in their bodies, whether or not they exercise, whether or not they can get some sleep, whether they learn about yoga, then it can change. It can do a 180 and they have none of it anymore. I've seen it. I'm not saying it happens for everyone, but I have seen it and I believe it. And being in the pandemic for all that time, whew, oh, I see that. 2 books recommended are The Great Cholesterol Myth, Why Lowering Your Cholesterol Won't Prevent Heart Disease, and The Statin-Free Plan. I love that. Exactly. And I know that when I took statins, it felt like someone was beating me with a baseball bat. So I'm not one of those people who can tolerate them. Liz, are you raising your hand? Yes.
Yes,
Your
I
hand-
have more questions, but I don't
because of your flower background.
I don't want to hog the floor if other people have questions, but I have multiple questions. So you said earlier that you were in 60 countries. I'd like to know about that.
Mhm. Well,
Were you as a nurse or just traveling, or what were you doing?
I didn't have sense enough to travel. Now I do, right? I was always working. And that essentially started with me going to work in Saudi Arabia when I was a new nurse, where I had a lot of money put out of my hands because of student loans. And when I was offered the chance to go, I went. I met people from 130 countries, and sometimes I had consultations because I was a burn nurse. And so when a new burn unit was being put up in Finland, I was asked to come by one of my friends who was a nurse from Finland to come and be a consultant. Then later, I got very involved with working with refugee health, and the questions that would go on from the refugees would be, why are these doctors treating us as badly as the people that we ran away from? And then the doctors would say, why are these refugees treating us like we're the people they were trying to get away from? And my answer was, I don't know. So let me go find out. And I had the opportunity to go work in some refugee camps. And then later I was developing some programs that USAID liked and paid me to go replicate them in other countries. And the others have been just working to decrease disparities, trying to get healthcare access, trying to develop sustainable programs in many countries. And I would say 50 countries have been working directly or being the person who is helping to teach healthcare providers who would be the direct workers. Okay.
Wow.
And we'll go back and forth. If someone else has a question, I'm glad to answer it. And then we'll come back to Liz. If anyone else has a question, I'm glad to get it. Let me see. Let me see if I can see. I don't see any other hands. Laura, yes.
Hi, Valda. Thank you so much. I love everything you're talking about, and the way you're saying it is just wonderful. I'm just totally relating. But anyway, This is a little bit different maybe, but it's my sister. She just had her 70th birthday, and I went down to Texas to visit her from Wisconsin. I drove out there. And since she retired about a year and a half ago from airport security, she's put on 60 pounds. And she's having a bad time, very bad time, getting around and stuff. But it's difficult for us to talk about it because I don't have a weight problem and she has a difficulty talking to me. And I don't know what to do, if I can help her or anything. Any thoughts you might have?
Very frequently, people don't want to hear anything that may be good for them. I have told my son things a million times, and then he'll come back and say, Mom, you know what such and such told me? I was like, oh my God, I just want to punch you right in the head. Because who is saying it sometimes is the right person. Many times when people make major changes in what they're doing, then they're going to have things like weight gain. They're going to have more problems with their joints sometimes just because of the weight gain. What has been found, though, is that when you're a person that they love and believe in and trust, they will hear it in time. They might not hear it when you want them to hear it, but it doesn't mean that they're not in those stages of change. You've seen the stages of change model. You have the pre-contemplation, the contemplation, the change, and then when you get to settling it in, and many people may be so depressed when they have a significant change like that, that changes their life. She may be grieving the loss of her job. And so it may be that rather than concentrating on her weight gain, to just talk to her about what her life is like. How are you feeling since you left work? Is there anything else that you're doing? Even though she's having a hard time, maybe getting around, there may be other things that she can do virtually. There may be things that there might be people who will come to her, but a lot of times I find, remember I was talking about people retiring and then things just go all to crap, and that's part of it. Like they have been so invested in what they do. Their vested interest is the job. Their personality is the job. Their whole identity is the job. They have friends there. They know what the routine is like. They know what to do. They know what's thought of them. They feel valued and they know they give value, and then all that goes away. It's like a death. And you've seen people grieving before. Sometimes that is the outcome. So I would say, don't approach it dead on. Just talk about things that might lift her up. Or if she is comfortable talking about how she feels, then maybe if there's something you can do that's non-combative in her mind or non-threatening, maybe you're calling her more. Maybe you're getting her nieces and nephews or grandchildren to show up more, because it might be a symptom of loneliness. It may be outright depression, or she could have some type of physical thing going on that has created this great change. Okay. I see some things going in the chat. My eyes are bad, so I don't always see it so well. So a friend of mine does yoga with me online as a way to relieve stress. Well, I can tell you that during the pandemic, when I couldn't get out at all, and I was trying to find a way to not go completely crazy, I would work out online with my sisters, and one of them cannot get up and move around. So she has a really bad back injury. So she would do chair exercises while we would do the other ones. But we got together 4 or 5 times a week, and that whole camaraderie made a big difference. Where we felt better, we might laugh at each other. We were like, okay, who's picking the music? Is it Sweating to the Oldies, or is it some line dance situation? And we would talk. How are you doing? What's going on with you? What's it like in your city? How are you coping? We had people in California, in Maryland, in Maine, in North Carolina. So we could kind of talk about different things, and it lifted us up. It really makes a difference. And by the way, breathing is really important. And we do take it for granted. What I did when I found that I was really under stress, what I did when I found out I had rheumatoid arthritis and I couldn't get to the doctor like I wanted to originally, I sought out breathing classes online. And there are so many different forms of deep breathing and holistic breathing. And there is plenty of research to show that if you do 5 minutes a day of deep breathing, where you're breathing in to a count of 5, holding for a count of 5, breathing out for a count of 5, doing that for 5 minutes a day can actually decrease your blood pressure by 4 to 6 points, which might be the difference in normal and sneaking into hypertension, right? Also, it refocuses you. Think about it. If you have to concentrate on breathing and holding your breath and trying to do it in a rhythm with the person who's talking, you are not thinking about all those other things that are swirling. And when I started to feel the benefits, what I would do was set my clock so that every 2 hours, I would take a 5-minute breathing break. Every other hour or so, on 1 hour, I would take a 5-minute breathing break. On the other one, I'd take a 5-minute walk outside break when the weather was permitting. Then I'd come back. I'd always have 55 minutes of the hour that I was actually doing whatever I had to do, but it changed my whole life. The other thing about breathing, and let me think about your sister for a minute, something that can happen is if she has sleep apnea. Sleep apnea can be really devastating. And when you wake up tired, and even when you're not sleeping well, then you don't have restorative time. You restore during sleep. That is when your body can say, oh, yeah, I can rest and I can get up and I can do more. But if you have sleep apnea, you are not getting any rest. You are basically fighting all night long to live, because the number one symptom of sleep apnea, other than feeling fatigue, et cetera, but the worst outcome of sleep apnea is sudden death. Yeah, and a lot of people don't take it seriously.
Yeah, I did have to share a room with her a couple of nights when we went out. And one night I slept maybe 45 minutes because of her breathing. It was horrendous. And yeah, it was gasping and all sorts of things. Yeah.
So think about this. You know, if I tell you to hold your breath for 5 minutes and then you to breathe in for 5, let's do that. So breathe in for a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did you feel any stress from that? A lot of times you feel stress from that because that's 15 seconds of not doing your normal in and out, which doing that means you may only get 4 or 5 breaths in an hour as compared to 12 to 20. With sleep apnea, the definition of sleep apnea, don't hold me to it, but typically it has to be at least 8 times an hour that you are not breathing for at least 10 seconds, let's say 20 seconds. And it can be much worse than that. There are some people who have hundreds of episodes of not breathing correctly over the course of a night. So if you hold your breath, let's just say with sleep apnea, you are not breathing for 30 seconds. We just did 15 seconds. You are not breathing for 30 seconds at a time. Your body is like, whoa, what's happening? Are we about to die? Can we correct this? How can we correct this? Something that happens when you have sleep apnea is your body will try to get rid of all the extra stuff. It's like if you're on a balloon, the hot air balloon, and things start going wonky and you start throwing off all the ballast and things like that in order to make the thing rise, your body tries to get rid of extra stuff. So it will make you wake up by doing this. It will make you wake up, right? Literally, it will force you to wake up so that you can live. Secondly, it will make you get up and go to the bathroom over and over to get rid of any excess fluid in your body, because the excess fluid is worrying your heart, right? It is not good for you. So then you're tired because you're just, you're startling yourself awake. The body does that. It startles you awake to try to reset you. It's almost like a slap in the face. But imagine how tired you are if you were startled awake 30 times during the night. Imagine how bad you feel if 30 seconds at a time, every 2 or 3 minutes, you are not breathing. Yeah. So you wake up, you feel bad, you gain weight. One of the first symptoms for a lot of people is weight gain, because they may be accustomed to being tired, or their new routine makes them feel tired. I had sleep apnea and didn't know it until I wrecked my car. I wasn't feeling particularly tired, but one day after working all day at the university, I would stop by this place and play cards to kind of get those bad kids out of my head. And so I thought, okay, I'm going home. I could tell I felt a little tired. I drank a Pepsi or something because I'm very caffeine sensitive, and I thought I'm fine. 15 minutes later, when I got to my place that had an underground parking garage, I ended up on the brick wall. The fortunate thing was there was nobody else around me. I didn't fall asleep in the middle of traffic, but I kind of was like, how did I get on this brick wall? I don't remember feeling like I passed out, but still, when I went in to check it out, they didn't find it originally because mine was super mild, and it only happened about 5:30 in the morning, typically. It didn't happen all day long, all night long. We're probably close to time. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. Oh, we got some time. We're good. We're good. I keep on talking. What y'all want to talk about? Yes, that is Liz. Oh, wait, let me go to Chris and then to Liz. And if there's anyone else, if you may have to put your hand up because I might not see you. Put the your icon up for that. So, Chris.
Yes, thank you. Talking about the breathing and the CPAP machine. I hate having to haul my CPAP when I go away.
Mhm.
And I will try to get away with not using it if I am on a weekend away and my husband's not with me. I've learned my lesson though. Last year when we had our conference, I was there for an extra night, did not bring my machine with me. And the first night, middle of the night, someone was in my room yelling at me to wake up. It was my dad, who's been gone 5-6 years now. Dad was in the room yelling at me, and because I had to get up. And since then, I am very good about bringing the CPAP, bringing the water, and using it, even when I'm not home with my hubby.
Yes, and the thing is, it makes a difference. Because when you're having that problem, it also raises your blood pressure because your body is in a state of please help me. Some people have sleep apnea because they actually have obstructions. And let me see, can I share? Let me see. If I can share screen. There it is. All right, so see this? Can you see the mouths? Okay, so a class 1 obstruction, or class 1 in the way it should be in your mouth, is this one to the, I guess it's to your left, right? And so you can see all that good open space, like a heart shape at the back, right? So that's your airway. Then as you go on over to class 4, some people have that much of an obstruction so that when they lie back, they're automatically going to close their airway. Some people don't have that. They have other reasons why. It may be more neurological. Sometimes it's positioning. But the thing is, dentists rarely tell people when they see this going on. They rarely tell them. Dentists can see all sorts of things. So I get into the kind of gross part, like dentists can see if you have sexually transmitted infections in your throat. But do you think they tell people? No, they were like, it ain't my business. It's like, they might not know. That can cause cancer and all sorts of things. But they won't tell you, or they don't tell you as much. So we're on a campaign to say to dentists, periodontists, all the people who go in your mouth, pay attention and tell the person, or at least ask, are you having any trouble breathing? Are you having any problems with sleep apnea? And those little devices have gotten smaller and smaller now. When I went to Hong Kong, I had a device this big. That was all I needed, plus my mask, instead of this thing, right? It was like this. So find out about it. Sometimes you can even rent them when you're going somewhere and you don't want to take your thing. Also use the, I can't remember the name of it, the brand name of the thing to clean your machine frequently. It makes a difference, because you can be putting germs into yourself. All right. And so there was a question from Liz. Yes.
You're an accredited speaker.
Yes.
I would like to know about your journey. What's your topic? Has it helped you? How long were you a Toastmaster? Are you also like in the National Speakers Association? Do you have any like courses on healthy living, and then you do group coaching and one-on-one? What's your model?
My topic was the ABCs of living well. And I talked about diabetes, heart disease, and things like why you need knee surgery, how you can stop it, all of those things. But that was my topic for the accredited speaker. I became a Toastmaster in 2011. I became an accredited speaker in 2018. I have been a professional speaker, or at least paid. I don't know if people call me a professional, but I've been paid to speak since 1999. And I have been exclusively pretty much paid as a speaker as my only income since 2007. Even though as a registered nurse, I work enough so that I can keep up to date. Do I have courses online? No, because I'm lazy and I don't ever get them done. Even though I have paid the money even to have a course done, I haven't gotten it done. Plus, I just do a lot of stuff. And sometimes I'm at the point where I have a new assistant who will start on Tuesday, who I'm hoping can help me with all of those things. As far as the National Speakers Association, I've been a member of the National Speakers Association since 2006. I was on the board of directors for the National Speakers Association until 2021. I served 4 years there. I've been the chair of the ethics committee, the chair of the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and I love national speakers and I love Toastmasters. Okay. Thank you. We have 7 more minutes. Any other questions?
Can I just piggyback off of Liz's question? For your accredited speaker, was it in Chicago that you gave your presentation? Okay,
Yes.
because you sound so familiar and I'm remembering your topic, and I think I sat in the audience cheering you on because it was so good. I'm so glad. Okay, great. That answers a question in the back of my mind. Thanks.
Yes. My hair was bigger. I had big curly hair, and I came out saying, I was born by the river. Yes, that was me. And I remember being terrified, even with all that I do all the time. I've spoken all over the places from one to literally thousands of people. And I was shaking. My son said, Mom, you were terrible. Because he knew that my ease of speaking was usually there. And he said it took you a full 5 minutes to kind of drop into your rhythm. But I was injured in the back where the guy who was helping with the countryman, the countryman microphones, the ones that go behind your ear, he was determined he had to do it, not let me do it. And he caught my earring and he was pulling I have pierced ears. I already have a tear. I literally have a tear from that. And I had on a wig. It was big curly hair, but it was a wig because my hair was falling out because I didn't even know yet about the rheumatoid. And I had this wig and I had my ear caught. I thought he was pulling my wig off. It was time for me to walk out on stage. There was no mirror backstage. So I was in this kind of freaked out thing going out there, but I got through. But yeah, I love the idea of having the ability to get in front of people and talk about things you love. And for me, I've had a family tragedy where I did not find healthcare providers to be people who are listening to me, maybe not intentionally, but sometimes because of paternalistic mindset that they think that they know. And in the end, I went to nursing school so I could learn the jargon so that I could talk to them and they could stop telling me to sit down in the corner, little girl, and shut up. That is why I went. And yes, that is Liz.
So since you became an accredited speaker, obviously you were speaking like crazy or in the National Speakers Association. Was it worth it? Other than the accolade that you got from Toastmasters, did it bring in more business, or is it just another feather, another title in your cap?
I wanted to do it because so few people were getting through. And I was thinking, what is going on? And why is it so hard? And why is it sometimes 9 people go up there, no one gets it? Or, even with our group, there were 9 and 6 of us made it, 3 did not. And one guy was already an Academy Award winner. It was like, okay, what just happened? But the thing is, part of my selfish reason for being an accredited speaker was to elevate me in Toastmasters so that people would know who I am. I don't think it's done I would say that when people are looking for a conference speaker and there is a list, I'm out there. A lot of people think that having a talk on health is not worth having someone to come to talk to their groups about. If I was talking about leadership, if I was talking about, I don't know what else, but there are people who will come up to me to say, how do you make money? You talk about health. It's like, well, health is big money. I could just have my own workshops and seminars. And I do that. I used to do retreats pre-COVID where I would do a supper club type setting where I would invite people in. We would have a wonderful meal that was way too fatty, way too sweet. Didn't care about that because, you don't have calories at a conference. So we would enjoy ourselves with the chocolate fountains and everything else. But then we talk about real issues. And at that time, we were using the audience response system, which now you can do everything on your phone. But people could ask real good, candid questions without identifying themselves if they would be too embarrassed. And we could dive deep, and we would spend about 4 or 5 hours between the dinner and the conversation, just getting to know about each other, know about our bodies. It might be topic specific. It might be for parents wanting to keep their kids from having sexually transmitted diseases, because I was a certified sexuality expert. I let that go during COVID. But yes, I love that. I love that so much. And I know my time is up now. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I appreciate your participation. And thank you very much, Chris, for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Valda. This is a wonderful topic. I wish more people would have been here, and being aware of those numbers, how we can take care of our health, that lets us continue to be wonderful, fabulous Toastmasters and continue doing more in our clubs, in our district, but also in our jobs, at work, our other organizations. I love the connection of healthy being key to being a better Toastmaster. I want to share with you real quick. Want to thank you. We have a nice little certificate for you as well. And I think we are connected on LinkedIn. I'll verify, and I will write a recommendation for you on LinkedIn as well. And hopefully that is a help for you. For everyone else, I did put into the chat box the link for Valda's evaluation. I hope that each of you take a few minutes, fill out the evaluation, share your comments and thoughts. I know Terry had to leave to go get her child a little while ago, but she had sent me a private note that she was absolutely loving your session. She was so glad that you came here tonight. For
May
everyone,
I say, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did put in the chat my prescription for better health, and it's in 3, so you can cut it up, put it on your refrigerator, give it to someone you love, copy it as much as you want, but it gives you some things to look for, some calls to action for yourself. Pick one, work on it, pick another, work on it, and enjoy.
Thank you so much. I am going to end our recording. If anyone would like to stay on afterwards, chit chat for a little while, we can do that. If you want to leave, I do have another meeting in a half hour, so we will end at that point definitely. If everyone would like to come off of turn their videos on, come off of the hidden view, we'd like to take a group photo of everyone here. So feel free, turn your video back on. Take yourself off mute. That just shows a nicer little picture there. And Kathy will do the countdown.
All right. Gloria's getting her light set. There we go. Wonderful. Here we go. 3, and smile big, and maybe you do your little heart symbol, etc. if you don't have a virtual background where your hands disappear. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody. Have yourselves a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Valda. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Valda.
Here.